Aloha, everyone. I'm up in the main house doing talk to text, working hard on finishing Brother K's first book. When he passed away, he bequeathed to me his 400 short stories, and I have been working very hard at creating order out of 400 stories, and it has been a challenge. And so, giving my hands a break, I would love to share this one story that I found. It's not going into this book, and but it was written by Kay, and it's going to go into another book. Yes, so Brother Kay's name was Keihanaikukauakahihulihe'ekahauanele. And in another story, I tell about how he got his name. And so here we are with Mr. Manuahi. This story takes place in Lahaina, and I would like to take a moment of silence for the people of Lahaina who are still suffering from the big fire. They're being moved around from hotel room to hotel room, and they don't have housing. And so I'd love to take a moment to give them a thought. So let's give them a moment of silence. And now I'd like to share with you this story, Mr. Manuahi. This story that was told to me 73 years ago when I was a young man living on the island of Maui, district of Lele, now known as Lahaina. Loke, to balance opposing views, became the key element to personal survival as tides of rapid change were swamping the Kanaka Maoli. The first Kanaka Maoli-owned general store opened for business, operated by Mr. Manuahi, a well-educated, well-bred individual. The word quickly spread about Mr. Manuahi's general store. Other businessmen enviously watched a steady stream of people make their way to his store to their chagrin. Mr. Manuahi had adapted well to the ideas and ways of a new society, yet he had not the capacity to embrace the concept of caveat emptor, buyer beware. Then he became aware of his suddenly plentiful cousins, aunties, uncles, best friends, who all asked for and received credit for their purchases, promising to pay as soon as possible. He followed the age-old custom of providing for as many as he could, thus gaining much face. For not to do so would burden him with a disastrous loss of face. He would rather die than be shamed. All of his suppliers demanded he pay cash on delivery, period, no exceptions. And so he did, while his relatives and good friends continued to buy on credit, promising to pay soon. Months went by, and Mr. Manuahi's business seemed to be booming, for he had a steady stream of customers, smiling. And yet, instead of basking in profits, he seemed not quite himself. For if one looked closely, one would see furrowed brow instead of his usual cheerful smile. Deep lines of worry creased his face, and he seemed constantly distracted. And it was evident that his health was deteriorating. Mr. Manuahi desperately asked his customers to please pay their bills, for he was facing an almost non-existent bank account balance. They all promised to pay their bills as soon as possible, not to worry. Soon Mr. Manuahi couldn't pay his bills. Then came foreclosure and finally bankruptcy. Many in the local community say that it was more than a coincidence that Mr. Manuahi died the same day he was forced into bankruptcy. Lele was inundated with throngs of people who came to Mr. Manuahi's funeral, and many guilty eyes wept innocent tears. Eulogies were given by many outstanding citizens who praised Mr. Manuahi, his unimpeachable character, his kindness, and his impeccable honor. And no one failed to note his generosity in his dealings, for he always gave the better part of the bargain to others. Yes, he always gave a little extra measure. Ever since that day, when thousands of people gathered to honor Mr. Manuahi, the people of Lele, in fact, the people at Maui, gave a little extra in their relationships, usually saying, "Here in honor of Mr. Manuahi," which eventually shorted to simply Manuahi. Many people today, including Hawaiians, think Manuahi means free. But some of us, Kanaka Maole, still remember the man behind the word, Mr. Manuahi, which literally means firebird. And since the time I came here 31 years ago, whenever I go to the market, there'll be somebody who will give me something extra, whether it's a tomato or a banana or something. And sometimes they would say Manuahi. And then Brother K explained to me the story of Mr. Manuahi and his story. So it would be wonderful if people would begin to remember that story again of Mr. Manuahi, and remember to give just something a little extra in memory of Mr. Manuahi. Have a beautiful day. Aloha.